Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready to take a bite out of the competition? Are you looking for ideas to make your business better? Welcome to the Core Business Show with Tim GSA, sponsored by Apple Capital Group. At the core of every successful business, you'll find people making a difference. And with each episode of the Core Business Show, we talk with those people, examine those ideas, and explore the strategies that make them special. Now, the host of the Core Business Show, Tim GSA.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Core Business Show with Tim GSA. I'm your host. Today we're going to talk about what is the GSA. And if most of you are familiar with government contracting, GSA is a gold mine. It's a prime contract that you have with the federal government, and it allows them to buy things from you almost instantaneously, which meaning that the process, it normally takes anywhere from 90 days to 6 months to get a contract. And what it is put you on a prime government list of buyers. So if you go to GSA.gov, and there's a lot of information about the GSA agency, it is the prime contracting office for the federal government. Most of all the purchases are made through this particular office. This agency buys everything from toilet paper to satellite stations or aircrafts. I mean, you name it, they buy it, down to the pencil and the pad. So if landing in contract with them, which you'll go through this extensive review, you all go through a negotiation process on pricing. And what you're going to do is you're going to negotiate the price. And once you negotiate the price, they approve you to be a contract. And anybody in the agency across the federal government agencies can go to the website and can purchase anything because the price has already been negotiated. It's more of a click and punch. So it's like I go to Amazon and I just can press it and automatically I've made the purchase authorization to purchase that item. And then it will settle within terms. So I can't really describe. It have taken small businesses who made $10,000 a year to $1 million or $10 million. And it just can avalanche from there. But one thing you'll notice within this interview I've done a couple months ago, you have to market yourself. You just can't get the contract and do nothing with it. The agency asks you, if you're going to have a contract, if we award you a contract, you have to procure $25,000 within a 24-month period, a 2-year period. Selling $25,000 in a 2-year period is nothing. Pick up the phone and call them, build a relationship, and they can buy $100,000 from you if they feel comfortable for you that you're going to deliver, and you have a good product, you have a good company. So we're going to take a station break real quick, and I'm going to play an interview I did this interview a couple months ago, and it is how to obtain a GSA contract. Let's hear a word from our sponsor real quick, and we're going to roll into the show.
You're listening to the Core Business Show, sponsored by Apple Capital Group. Apple Capital Group in Jacksonville, Florida, is a commercial lender that specializes in asset-based loans, equipment leasing and financing, invoice financing, commercial real estate loans, and asset-based financing in the U.S. and Canada. Apple Capital Group is a direct lender that lends on their private equity investment portfolio. 90% of most loans are decided within 2 hours, and vendor funding within 24 hours after documents are completed, with a one-page application. No slow no's, just a quick decision and a fast yes. To get more information about lending from Apple Capital Group, call 866-611-7457. That's 866-611-7457 to speak with one of our loan specialists. Or visit us right now at applecapitalgroup.com. Welcome back to the Core. Once again, here's Tim GSA.
Well, welcome back to the Core Business Show. Let me talk about the GSA. GSA stands for General Service Administration, and it's an independent agency of the federal government or U.S. government established in 1949 to help and manage the basic function of government agencies. GSA suppliers provide products and services, communication through the U.S. government office. It provides transportation, space for offices, you name it, they buy it. And again, as I mentioned, you want to have this agency, you want to have this contract. It's a tedious process, but however, once you get it, it can mushroom your business from nothing to a multi-million-dollar agency. Again, a lot of information you can get is on GSA, is www.gsa.gov, and it will explain how the agency is set up. To get on schedule, again, you have to have a lot of information, your business plan pretty much, your pricing plan. You have to do a verification of your customer service. Dun& Bradstreet will do that for you for $150. That's mean they'll go out and poll your customers to get a review how you do your business. And there are a list of schedules. If you want to take a look at the schedules, go to federalbidsops.gov and you can see a list of all the schedules from IT, which is pretty common at IT 70, is Schedule 70, and you just can go down the line on the schedules. So if you go to fbo.gov, it is all the bids are not on there, but it will at least give you an overview how many schedules are on for contract. And I'm gonna go there real quick. And if you go to advanced search, I believe you can find it here. And under advanced search, you see there's NICS codes and SIC codes, and then there is the classification codes for the GSA contract. So you have weapons, you have nuclear, you have fire equipment, ammunition, guided missiles, aircraft, space vehicles, shipping equipment for marine vessels, rebel equipment, office supplies, general effects, which is boats, planes, motorboats, trucks, tractors, cars, vehicles, medical equipment, tires, engines, IT equipment, wood making products, metal making products, services, agriculture, you name it, it's there. They have a whole list of that, and if you go cruise to the bottom, then it gets a little bit. They divide it even down to miscellaneous that they don't list. So I'm going to go ahead and start the show, and it's a rebroadcast, real helpful information on how to obtain a GSA contract. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Financing Your Business Today. I'm Tim JK, your host. Today's topic is how to get a GSA schedule. I have the pleasure of having Bob with Advantage GSA online. He's going to talk about how to get on the GS schedule and talk about services of this company. If you want to call into the show, you can call in at 347-324-3460, 347-324-3460. Or you can pose a question in the chat room, and I'm going to read it out on the air. But when you do call in, we just ask you to press 1 so we know you have a question, and we'll put you right on the air. Well, to begin with, good morning, Bob.
Good morning.
I guess to begin with, kind of tell us about yourself, and then we're just going to talk about the GSA.
Sure.
GSA and what's GSA all about?
Okay. Well, I'm the national sales manager for a company that processes government applications, the GSA being one of those. I've been doing this for several years. Enjoy it a great deal because it gives small businesses the opportunity to grow by using the GSA vehicle to sell their products and services into the government agencies. The GSA, if I may, I just go ahead and start.
Yeah, go ahead.
The GSA is actually, first of all, it stands for General Services Administration. It is the buying arm of the federal government. It's made up of about 15,000 buyers across the country. Those buyers represent 600 federal agencies. When one of those agencies has a requirement for a product or service, they contact the people that are on what's called the GSA schedule, and that's just a list of approved companies, and they purchase directly from those companies. The GSA is set up to have the ability to purchase up to $150,000 on a direct award basis. It means they do not have to go out to bid for those purchases. Anything between $150,000 and $2.5 million has to be bid, but does not have to be competitively bid. It means they can send the bid to one company if they choose. The contract, once you get on the schedule, the contract itself is good for 5 years, and it's renewable 3 times. So in essence, it's a 20-year contract. Right now, There's just under 20,000 companies nationwide that are on the schedule. That's actually less than 0.5% of the companies in the United States. The GSA last year actually spent a total, including the VA spend, about $56 billion. That number has gone up every year for the past 12 years. So it doesn't matter who's in office at the time, that spend continues to grow for two reasons. Number one, it's much easier for a government agency to purchase through the GSA. And number two, the vast majority of companies that are on the GSA are small business. The advantage in terms of set-asides on the GSA run like this. The small business set-aside is 27%. Woman-owned business would be an additional 5%. Veteran-owned or service-disabled veteran-owned business would be an additional 5%. Hub zone is an additional 3%. And disadvantaged businesses would be an additional 5%. So theoretically, you could have a total of about 47% set aside if you fell under all of those set asides. But I always tell people, pay closest attention to the small business set aside at 27%. The average, if you just do the numbers, take that 20,000 into that 56 billion, that's about $2.5 million per company per year is the average of what people do on the GSA. The reality is not everybody does that average. There are, statistically, if the GSA is split up into thirds, about 1/3, the bottom third of the companies that are on the GSA actually do little to no business with the GSA. And if you ask those people, why aren't you doing any business? They all say the same thing. It's because they're waiting for the GSA to contact them.
Wow.
And it doesn't work like that. Getting on the GSA basically is giving you a hunting license, and it allows you the ability to hunt. So once you get on the GSA, you have to proactively reach out and chase the business. And the people that do that tend to do very well. That middle third of folks that are another 6,000 to 7,000 companies that are on there get it sort of. They do maybe $250,000 to maybe $1 million a year. And they reach out and contact some folks. They're touching base with a handful of agencies, and they consider themselves to be doing pretty well. And they may very well be in comparison to the other part of their business. The top third are the folks that really get it. These people hit it out of the park. They're $5, 10, 15, 20, $30 million a year on the GSA. And if you ask those folks, how are you doing it? They'll tell you, we chase the dickens out of the business. There's two titles of people that you need to chase once you get on the GSA schedule. One of those titles is the GSA buyer. I mentioned there are 15,000 of them across the country. Those buyers are the ones that actually submit the purchase orders to the GSA schedule holders. The other title you want to pay very close attention to are the contract officers that work for the federal agencies. Their job is to facilitate purchases on behalf of their agency. So you would reach out to a contract officer and say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I sell, I'm on the GSA schedule, please give me a chance, and proceed from there. And you talk to hundreds of them, basically. There's tens of thousands of contract officers around the country. Okay, I'm trying to give you the 10,000-foot view here.
That was great. A lot of great information.
Good.
Are you finished, or are you still?
I wanted to pause to see if there are any questions or
Nothing so far.
Okay. The process for getting on to the GSA itself is the gotcha. There is an application that is anywhere between 350 and 500 pages And that has to be filled out in a very specific order, and they want to see some very specific information on that application submitted to the GSA administration. Once they receive it, they're running right now about 4 months to accept and award you a GSA number. My company, that's what we do, is we process the application in order to get you onto that GSA schedule. And it typically takes my processor about 300 hours to process that application on your behalf. We usually spend between 6 and 8 weeks getting that done, and then we submit it to the GSA administration. Because we do this for a living, we know exactly what they want to see and in what order they want to see it. The odds of companies, and not to say that companies can't do this on their own, they certainly can, but the odds aren't with you. Less than 20% of the people that attempt to fill this out on their own and send it in succeed in getting on to the GSA. Of those 20%, almost 80% of those companies end up using an attorney to help them fill out the application. The reason for an attorney is because the application is written by GSA attorneys, and it's predominantly legalese. It takes somebody with a familiarity with legal language to be able to not only understand the question, but exactly how they want to see the answer. So the government, they just don't make it easy. Does that help you understand at least what it kind of takes to get on?
Absolutely.
Once you get on, what you have to do, I can't emphasize enough that I would never want anybody that I've had a conversation with to believe that you get on the GSA and then the business starts coming to you. It just doesn't work like that. You have to chase the business.
Okay. Now, with the GSA itself, not to go off topic real quick, the Naval, and I think the Army and the Coast Guard have their own type schedules as well, or that also the umbrella of the GSA?
No, they're under the umbrella of the Department of Defense.
Okay.
And the Department of Defense does a substantial amount of business with the GSA. The GSA is actually made up of 48 different categories. Half of them are products, half of them are services. There right now is only one of those schedules which is closed, and that is the Schedule 75, which is the office products schedule. All other schedules are wide open to new applicants.
Okay.
That number of almost just under 20,000, that number has remained the same for the past 5 years in a row, which means there's as many people getting off of the schedule as they're getting on.
Wow.
This GSA has a stipulation that says when you get on the GSA schedule, if you don't do at least $25,000 in business the first 2 years of being on the schedule, they're going to boot you off. So plenty of people get booted off because they're not aggressively pursuing the business.
Well, $25,000 is not a lot. That can be almost one order.
$25,000, you're just not trying if you can't hit that within a 2-year period.
Absolutely. So they're giving you ample opportunity, but it's up to you to try to get one thing.
Correct. Yep.
In one case. Kind of name the categories, if you don't mind. You mentioned that there are Schedule 75, which is office products you mentioned. That's
right.
Proposed, and you mentioned it earlier before we went live. Can you tell us the reason why?
Schedule 75, they decided that of those 600 agencies that they were spending money on office supplies across hundreds and hundreds of companies, and they didn't feel that they were getting the economy of scale. So they decided to narrow that down to about 20 companies that they now funnel most of those purchases through in order to get better pricing and through higher volumes.
Okay.
This is a trial. They're just trying it out. I believe in October of 2012, they're going to open up Schedule 75 again.
Okay. And with that particular schedule, I guess if you look across the board for office products, you have your large people like Quill and Boise, Paper Supply. Most people are going to be buying their products through them anyway, so they're just trying to go straight to the dollar.
It was strictly a dollars and cents. Somebody somewhere decided that was a smarter way for these agencies to proceed, so they enacted that using this GSA vehicle.
Okay. And can you also name the type of, I know you said 50% is products, 50% is services. If you don't mind, just go ahead and name some of the products and services that you can get on schedule for.
Oh, sure. The largest schedule on the GSA is Schedule 70, and that's the IT schedule. Last year, that accounted for $16 billion in sales, was just on IT products and services.
Wow.
They have it. When you think of the GSA, you can think in terms of anything that a commercial company would buy, the GSA buys. There's a consulting schedule where consultants get on there and consult in everything from business practices to training to any kind of consulting that you could imagine. There are, like I say, from a products, there's a hardware superstore, which is also a pretty large schedule. Thing that you could imagine that you would buy from a hardware store is listed under that schedule. There are, I can't go through them all, but you kind of get the picture that anything that a commercial company would buy, the U.S. government buys.
Okay, so they'll manufacture anything. They just buy everything pretty much. And if they want to get a copy of the list of classification codes, there's a place they can go to on the GSA or the federal site so they can look at the categories?
Right. For the different categories, the site where you look up the different schedules and their subcategories is called GSA E as in Edward Library. And the actual address is www.gsalibrary.gsa.gov. Okay.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. www.gsaelibrary.gov.
Okay.
Government website. That library has a listing of every single schedule. And if you click on that schedule and then go in and look at any of the subcategories, you can click on that subcategory title, and they're all titled with numbers. Click on that, and it'll list every single contractor in there that's on that schedule. You have the ability to look and see what their socioeconomic status is, whether they're a small business or a woman-owned business or whatever. You have the ability to look at their contract terms and conditions as well as their price list.
Wow.
So you can go in there and look at all of your competitors and find out what they're charging the GSA in terms of pricing. The GSA, this is probably a good time to talk about pricing. The GSA requires what's called most favored customer status, which means whatever prices you are currently selling to your best commercial customer, that's the prices they expect you to offer on the GSA.
Okay.
So you don't have to go into the weeds to be able to sell something to the government. Most people, what you'll see on those price lists are probably the same thing that you see out there in the commercial world.
Okay, so they have the same pricing. They just want the best price that you sell to your customer.
Right. I always tell people the GSA isn't looking for the best price. They're looking for your best price.
And is it really up to the discretion of the contract officer or the agency to make that call?
It is.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So if you're not going to say you're really good with this particular contract officer, but if you build a nice rapport, you have good pricing, and you're reliable, they can say, okay, yes, this is under $150,000. I can go with you without a hard.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how it happens. It's very relationship driven. They are looking for vendors that are reliable, that do exactly what they say they're going to do, that ship product or perform the service in the time frame that they said that they were going to. And when they find somebody that they're comfortable with, they tend to do repeat business over and over. On top of that, a contract officer in a particular agency would tell the other contract officers within that agency, hey, we found a good vendor. I'd recommend you use these guys for X, whatever that is, with product or service.
Okay. Now, going to, I think you also mentioned that's the direct award, $150,000, but $150,000 to $2.5 million. Then, kind of elaborate what was that particular clause for them to be.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything between $150,000 and $2.5 million has to be bid by regulation, but does not have to be competitively bid. It means that if they choose, and they often do, they can send the bid to only one company.
Okay.
So they might have $1 million bid, but they know that this one company is reliable and that's who they want to do this product or service. So they would just send that bid out to that one company.
Now, the process of getting paid, so through this process, it just really depends on what the terms are. Do they just give you the credit card number, or they bill us for this, or how is the payment done?
Okay, payment, it's interesting because the government, the GSA, because they know everything there is to know about your business, you're in their system, it's very easy to pay you. They have a 30-day payment clause in the contract. So once they've received an invoice from you, 30 days later, you're getting paid. Typically, anything $3,000 or less, they're going to pay you via a payment card. They give you a Visa card, and then they just load up the account with however much it was.
Okay.
Anything over that, typically, they're sending you a check. So it's pretty straightforward, but most of the people that I talk to that are on the GSA schedule said the GSA pays way better than their commercial customers.
Oh, definitely, because of that clause. Usually,
Sure.
sometimes they pay within 10 days. I know contracts I've dealt with. Once the officer signs off of it, you can expect it. So
Right.
They actually don't send a physical check out. They actually do electronic transfer to your account.
They can. You have the choice of setting up either or when you do your terms and conditions on the initial application.
Okay. So the GSA contract is mainly everything is negotiated and pricing negotiated at the very beginning. Kind of cleans that out. They don't have to do this whole process. They've done it, due diligence, give us a price, boom, there it is.
Right.
So they don't have to haggle or do the check. So it's mainly streamlining the process that they don't have to do all of these, list these things on federal bid ops for the officer itself, which makes more work for them.
Right. Well, and to give you an idea, there's two ways to do business with the federal government. One way is you get your CCR, your Central Contractor Registration, and that allows you the ability to bid on opportunities on the website called FedBizOps. It's fbo.gov, and it stands for Federal Business Opportunities. There's currently about 625,000 companies that have a CCR and that bid on those jobs. The attrition rate with the CCR is almost 50%. Half of the people don't renew their CCR at the end of a year because they either didn't win anything, or if they won something, they didn't make any money on it. The difference for a government agency to purchase something through the GSA or through the FedBizOps site, doing it through the GSA, they could feasibly have their product or service within 7 to 10 business days, pretty regularly. If they send it over to FedBizOps, they have to put it out to bid to these CCR holders for a minimum of 60 days. They then have to review those bids. The average amount of time that it takes for them to see a product or service through FedBizOps is about 100 days.
Wow.
So if you're a government agent and they're just people like everybody else, you have a choice. You're going to go through the GSA or you're going to send it over to FedBizOps. They send it through GSA whenever there's somebody in the GSA schedule that has what they're looking for. If they can't find it, then they flip it over to FedBizOps. Also, all new construction only takes place through FedBizOps.
Okay.
The GSA doesn't buy a handful of things. They don't buy automobiles through the GSA. They don't buy guns or ammo through the GSA. They don't hire attorneys typically. They don't buy or lease real estate through the GSA. But just a handful of things that they don't buy. Most everything else you can think of, they purchase.
And what's the reason? I guess with weapons is really clear because of security, but for attorneys, for automotives, which is a constant with the government and real estate leasing for offices, why these are not prohibited, but they don't buy on these schedules?
Well, they don't buy it on the schedule because they don't want the officer at that level making those decisions. They have people that are very specific to real estate in these organizations, and those people handle all transactions.
Okay.
The government leases a ton of buildings. No question about it. I mean, I think over 50% of the buildings that they occupy are leased.
Okay. So then maybe the agency has specific needs and so forth, so they really need someone to handle what they need for their particular office.
Correct. Uh-huh. Yeah, and from an attorney standpoint, the government has all of their own attorneys. They may very well subcontract out certain work, but they don't do that through the GSA schedule.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier regarding the $56 billion. The $56 billion is purchased by the GSA every year?
Correct. Well,
okay.
that was last year.
Last year.
Right. Yeah, it's. I can remember in 2010 it was almost $40 billion. So it continues to go up every year.
Okay. And can you talk about the set-asides, if you don't mind? Not only you have a GSA contract, most people don't understand what set-asides are. So how does that play as a part of your GSA contract? Is it connected together, or is it just a way they have to, if a person is already certified as a woman-owned business, isn't that an endorsement on a GSA contract, or you have your GSA contract and you have these other endorsements with it?
Okay. When you are applying for the GSA schedule, at that time, you would need to get your certification for a woman-owned business or a disabled veteran or whatever to go in listed with those set-asides. The small business set-aside is something that's automatic. You don't have to be certified. The SBA actually is the one that dictates whether or not you have a small business. If you go on to the SBA website and you just look up small business categories, they have a PDF that's about 12 pages long that lists every single industry in the country, and you just find your industry and you can look and see it's either based on dollar volume or on employee count, and that tells you whether or not you have a small business. So you don't have to do anything. Part of what you have to submit is your financials when you have your application completed, and in those financials they can tell right away based on your industry whether or not you're a small business.
Okay. And you have the set aside for small business, which is going to be automatic. Also you mentioned there woman-owned business, which is 5% of the schedule. Right. Disabled is 5%. 3% is hub zones. Disadvantage is 5%. So if you have all of these certifications, that means by GSA standards, they have to award these percentages out of that whole portfolio of $56 million.
Correct.
Okay. That's their goal. Do they already?
Yeah, well, the GSA hasn't missed hitting those set-asides since 1949.
Oh, okay. So they aggressively want to get those things done.
Absolutely. I would say for the first 6 to 8 months of their fiscal year, which starts October 1st, they're pushing business towards those set-asides specifically.
Okay, and their fiscal year is October 1 to the end of September? Correct. Okay. Now, like any business, not any business, but the government operates a little differently. So is it a sense that when you have a budget, and if you don't use your budget, you lose it? So is there a rush towards the end of the schedule to spend those funds because you can't roll them over?
We start seeing government agencies spending additional monies than what they normally spend in about August, the beginning of August. And that's exactly what they're trying to do, is they're trying to spend the rest of their budget. The same thing happens at the beginning of the year because they have new budgets to work with. And so we see additional spends at the beginning in the October, November timeframe.
Wow.
So that's exactly what's happening. They're trying to spend the money so they can keep their budget. And then once they have a new one, they have some new dollars. They're trying to get things taken care of in case they don't have monies left at the end of their year.
Now, with the new budgets that's coming up with the government, is there a projection that, hey, you won't get $56 billion this year, you actually will get less? That's still not going to play a huge part of this whole schedule, right?
Right. Well, they're not cutting back on the GSA spend at all because, for the most part, it's a very efficient way for the government to do business.
Okay.
On top of that, there's a good percentage, I don't know exactly what it is, but a good percentage of the companies that are on the GSA schedule are actually small businesses. So they're helping fuel the economy through this GSA model.
I'll follow. Okay. When you mentioned earlier regarding the third and third, the bottom, the middle, and the top, I'm assuming the top would be your largest company, maybe Hughes Tools, and
not necessarily.
Oh.
We still have we have small businesses. I know there's a guy out in California that sells office chairs who his third year of being on the GSA schedule, the guy did about $7 million.
Wow.
He's a one-man company. He works out of his house. So, I mean, there's dollars available. It all depends on how aggressively you want to pursue it. I spoke to a guy last week that sells medical equipment predominantly to VA hospitals. He did $30 million last year with the GSA. And I asked him, I said, how did you do that? He said, Bob, I've got 14 sales reps that park their bodies on the steps of those VA hospitals every single day, and that's all they do is sell to those VA hospitals.
Wow.
And I said, do you think you've seen the top end of where you can go? And he said, heavens no. He says, I think we can double this probably pretty easily. I'm looking for additional salespeople right now.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. It's not the Fords and the huge companies, it's really the defense contractors is really close to mom and pop operations.
Right. Yeah, any size company can succeed to any degree depending on how aggressive they are in their sales function. This guy that I was talking about in California, the one-man band, that guy is a salesman through and through. And
wow.
He told me that the way that he's built that up, when he talks to a GSA buyer or a contract officer, he doesn't let them off the phone until they've given him 2 more names and 2 more phone numbers of other officers. And he said, I've just kept doing that over and over again. And he said, now I'm dealing with about 1,500 people that I sell chairs to.
Well, that's amazing. So, before we actually talk about more details with your company, now, once they get a GSA contract, you mentioned earlier that they really need to hit the ground running. Is there ways that companies like yours can provide lists of current officers, or how would they actually get started?
Right. Well, if they choose to use my company, we actually have a marketing division that will market their company to those buyers and to those contract officers.
Wow.
And we would just do an outbound calling campaign on their behalf. If they decided they wanted to do this on their own, it's probably a little slower process, but I mean, you can go to the SBA and get a list of some GSA buyers in your region. And then from there, you would ask them, do you know any contract officers that I could contact in order to sell my products or services? So two ways to do it. We do it's a little more fast track. I would have somebody making about 100 outbound calls on your behalf a day once you got onto the schedule. And so you would see a lot quicker return having us do it. But that's not to say that people can do it on their own. The guy selling the chairs, he's doing it on his own. That guy selling the medical equipment, he's doing it on his own.
Okay.
So it's not impossible to do it on your own.
Okay. Let's talk about your company. And if I'm a customer, I wanted a small business, I want to be on schedule. What should I do?
Okay, the best way is to talk to somebody that, like within my company, I have a staff of people around the country, and they're GSA specialists, and they'll walk you through the exact process of what it would take. I usually tell people that once you tell me, yes, you want to move forward with my company, then we send you an email with a list of things that you need to start gathering for us to be able to start filling that application out on your behalf. And it's about 40 or 50 pages worth of stuff, things like your last couple of years' financials, your balance sheets, a list of invoices so we can see not only what products or services you sell, but what kind of prices you charge, a list of customers that they would have to send to a company called Open Ratings. They're a division of Dun & Bradstreet. They're going to send a questionnaire to your customers, and then based on those responses, they're going to rate your company. That rating goes in with the application itself. So things like that, about 40 or 50 pages worth of stuff. My company processes, we put over 100 people a year onto the GSA. And so we're very familiar with exactly the nuances of the application itself. We have a 99% success rate of getting people onto the schedule, which is one of the top in the industry. This is probably a good time to talk about qualifications, because the GSA has 5 qualifications that you have to meet in order to be eligible to get onto the schedule.
Okay.
And those are, you have to have been in business for at least 2 years. They like to see that you've done at least $25,000 in business over the course of those 2 years. None of the principals or owners can have had a felony. The company cannot have filed bankruptcy, and you can't supply any finished goods from non-compliant countries, meaning anybody the United States doesn't have a free trade agreement with. And it's basically any of the communist countries. You couldn't take something from Iran and sell it to the federal government.
Or from China.
Yeah, any of the communist countries.
Okay. And also you're saying you got to be in business for 2 years, have showed sales in that 2-year period of 25,000.
Right.
And the company could not be in bankruptcy.
The company cannot have filed bankruptcy in its past. You can have a personal bankruptcy, that's not a problem.
Okay.
But no company bankruptcies. And no felonies from any of the principals.
The dealing with the bankruptcy in particular reason why? Because it maybe inhibit the products getting delivered, or just trying to play devil's advocate?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why they have that requirement, but I know they are very strict about it. We had a company that we tried to get onto the GSA. The guy had bought the company from somebody who had filed a company bankruptcy years before, and by the time we submitted it and they reviewed it and went through it, he was not allowed a GSA schedule because of that bankruptcy in that history.
Okay. And what regarding the felonies, so the owners or officers of the company could not have felonies for good reason?
Correct. Yep. Again, because you're dealing with federal agencies, they want to make sure that the people they're dealing with are upright and don't have any shady backgrounds.
Okay, I follow. Right. And also, you mentioned that you would give them a 40-page document to fill out, and from there you say it would take about 300 hours. And 300 hours, how long, once they get that packet to you, how long it would take for your team to produce a schedule?
Well, typically from start to finish is about 6 months. It takes my processor about 300 hours. We usually get that done in about 6 to 8 weeks. We then submit it to the GSA administration, and they're running about 4 months to accept and award you a GSA number. So average is about 6 months. We've seen some a little quicker. We've seen a fair number that take a little bit longer. It depends on how quickly you can get me that 40 to 50 pages worth of stuff.
Okay. So, again, well, it takes 6 weeks for your guys in order to put the whole schedule together and to submit it.
Correct.
Okay. And then from that, you send it like overnight to the GSA, and then once that period starts, you're looking at 4 months from beginning to the end at GSA.
Correct. Yep.
Now, if they don't, for example, if they have a question, does that process stop? They ask for clarification for this question, and then if that clock starts over again, or how that process usually starts?
No. If they, well, my company, because we've been doing this for so long, we've been around about 8.5 years, and we're very good at processing paperwork. We know exactly what needs to be in there and how it needs to, what order it needs to be in, and how they want to see it. So, I mean, it is really rare when we ever have somebody come back and have to have a question clarified. If they do, if somebody's doing it on their own and they submit it and have question, they send it back to them, and then you have to resubmit it to clarify the question. The GSA right now has a stipulation that you can't use an application that's older than 45 days.
Wow.
So online, when you grab that application, you better make sure at the time you're ready to submit it that it's the latest revision.
Okay.
There's all kinds of gotchas that they set up as, to me, it seems like traps, but they set up ways to not give you the GSA number if you didn't do this or didn't do that.
So everything has to be checked off, and I guess they must have a clerk that does that, check everything off, and look at the date. But if you download the date and send it in, and that means that schedule expires, that's mean if they send it back to you, you have to update.
Correct. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We would correct it. Again, we're operating with a 99% success rate of getting people onto schedule. So I don't even hear of the GSA coming back to us.
And except you mentioned about the one company with the bankruptcy, and so
right.
Okay, but he can actually reincorporate into another business name and start over.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not totally gone altogether. I guess in closing, anything you'd like to add as a summary?
Well, yeah, I would like to say that the GSA is a good avenue for businesses that are looking to grow. And if you're looking to grow, you have to be willing to invest in the business to accommodate that growth. We've put a number of people onto the GSA, and as their business has grown, they're struggling with building an infrastructure to support that growth. So I always tell people, be careful what you wish for. Once you get on the GSA, your business will increase as long as you pursue the business. And when it does, be prepared to take care of that growth. It's wonderful to see somebody who started out as a small business and they turn into a mid-size or even a large company through the use of the GSA. One other thing to consider is once you have a GSA schedule, all of the private companies out there, the big Fortune 100, Fortune 200 companies, they all do federal contracts. They're required by law to subcontract out 37% of every federal dollar to small business. They typically look to people that are on the GSA schedule, not because you're better at doing what you do, but because you're already pre-qualified to do business with the federal government. So it's very easy for them to include you as a subcontractor.
Wow, that's an opportunity.
It is. It's huge.
And also, besides subcontracting, there's something unique in Texas, California, and Florida. I know several years ago, they were talking about the Texas have Tex Mass. This means if you have a GSA schedule, and Texas, California, and Florida, I know a few years ago had that if you have a GSA schedule, you can also get on a Texas schedule automatically, and it's Texas version, Florida's version, and California version of the GSA schedule that will prompt you up as well. So it puts you front line. So I didn't know if any other states that you know of have that. I know Texas, California.
All state and local governments now have the ability to purchase through the GSA schedule.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Every state. If you're selling products, typically you're instantly nationwide because you can ship products anywhere. If you're a service company, you have to determine what your geography is and then state that geography in your terms and conditions when you fill out the application.
Okay, I follow. Yeah, I was mentioning the state agencies themselves. So the state agencies can buy from the federal government agencies?
No, they can buy directly from the vendors that have a GSA schedule and use the GSA pricing that they've listed.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know TexMass have one in Florida does as well. Also, several years ago, there was an article in Inc. magazine says that once you're on GSA schedule, your company just with the schedule alone is worth $250,000. Inc. magazine. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember offhand. I have the article because the value of the contract, anybody buying that contract is worth that much. So that was just hindsight. It's something I saw in passing a few years ago.
The ruling is when you get a GSA schedule, if you decide to sell the company, the schedule goes with the company, becomes an asset. Probably about 3/4 of the people that get onto the GSA do it as part of their exit strategy.
Wow. Add that additional value. Well,
absolutely.
I really appreciate you coming to the program and talking about the GSA schedule. Appreciate your time. And how can they contact you again?
Okay. Best way to contact me is through my company. I'll give you my direct line. My number is 303-690-9043, or I can be reached. My email address is bsteger@advancedsingulargsa.com. So it's bsteger@advancedgsa.com.
And your company's website?
Company's website is www.gsaschedulecontract.net. www.gsaschedulecontract.net.
Great. Okay, Bob, I really appreciate you coming to the program. Bob Steger with Advanced GSA.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining the program today.
You bet.
Thank you, Bob.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. If anybody want to get a copy of this episode, you can get it from Blog Talk Radio, or you can download it from iTunes on the Apple Capital Group's page. For more information, reach out to Bob. He gave you his number. It's 303-690-9043. Again, this has been another production of the Apple Capital Group, financing your business today. Have a good weekend. God bless. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet. For more information about equipment financing and asset-based loans, visit our website, applecapitalgroup.com. That's applecapitalgroup.com. Or call us at 866-611-7457. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. And remember, you can always get to the core via iTunes. You'll find all our previous episodes there. And thanks again for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet.
Again, this has been another production.
The Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet. You can download this episode on iTunes on the Blog Talk Radio. Thank you for listening today, and we will have an outline of this show on our blog, which is blog.applecapitalgroup. Again, thank you for listening to the program. And if you enjoy these series that we have, please Google Plus it if you don't mind, share it, so we can kind of measure if the shows are been effective to the community. Thank you for listening, everybody. And again, Tim Jacquet, your host. Another production of Apple Capital Group, the Core Business Show. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet. For more information about equipment financing and asset-based loans, visit our website, applecapitalgroup.com. That's applecapitalgroup.com. Or call us at 866-611-7457. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. And remember, you can always get to the core via iTunes. You'll find all our previous episodes there. And thanks again for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet.